This is the Sports Edge with Rick Wolf on your flagship station for New York sports. The Fan, Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM, WFAN, New York.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Rick Wolf's Sports Edge. I am your host, Rick Wolf. Well, this may be unprecedented on this show, but because of the overwhelming number of emails and calls and comments that came in last week regarding the Myths and Misconceptions show we did about college recruiting, I've taken the liberty of asking Wayne Mazzoni to come back this Sunday morning to continue our conversation and to take more calls about this very perplexing subject. And as we all know, we established last week, there are a bunch of myths and misconceptions for parents who go through this process. In many ways, it's the culmination of all the years of youngsters who've come up through youth level, through middle school, travel teams, high school, whatever, and now they feel that the time has come in high school that they can reap the rewards of being recruited by a college. And, in some parents, this is all about getting a scholarship for their youngster. In some cases, it's not about necessarily getting scholarship money. It's more about just using the athletic talents to be recruited in order to get into a competitive college where the academics and admission rates are difficult. But the fact of the matter is, no matter how you slice it, as we established last Sunday, this is very, very complicated stuff. And I expect to get more calls this morning about this as we continue to briefly recap what we went through last week and go through a bunch of other myths and misconceptions with Wayne throughout the hour. Now, just to remind you that Wayne Mazzoni does a lot of public speaking on this topic, and he also serves as the pitching coach at Sacred Heart University, so he knows firsthand what we're talking about. And, of course, I urge you to check out his website, which is getrecruited.net for more information about Wayne and what he has to offer. Wayne, good morning.
Hey, Rick, I was going to say it's been a while since we've spoken, but it actually hasn't. So
well, it's been about a week, I think. And, of course, I've had her on the show many times in the past, and you just bring such great insight. You cut away all through the clutter when it comes to this topic. Now, I just want to very briefly, Wayne, go through what we went through last week. And friends, of course, I do invite you to call in. Our toll-free line is 1-877-337-6666. That's brought to you by the Endless Summer Party at Resorts AC, managed by Mohegan Sun. Very quickly, Wayne, we went through this last week. That number one, the first myth is no matter the talent level of your son or daughter, chances are excellent that there's some sort of college program, probably at the Division III level, where they can play, collegiate sports. And that's just, quite frankly, as you mentioned last week, probably not true, because college sports, even at the Division III level, it's not just the next step up from a high school varsity or travel team. Division III is a huge, huge jump, and I don't think a lot of parents or even the kids understand that.
Well, I was thinking about two things in prep for this conversation today, and one is obviously there's a lot of colleges, Division I, II, and III, and NAIA, and community college, junior college, where there are many teams and there are many kids that have obviously gotten recruited because they're playing on these teams. Mm-hmm. So for a fair amount of kids, obviously, while it's not easy to go through, it does work out. They get recruited, they get onto a college roster. Hopefully they play 4 years, which is something maybe we'll cover today about what it's like once you actually get there. But the fact of the matter is it's a numbers game. If you look at the amount of high school athletes in any sport and then just take the number of college athletes in that sport, it's by statistics, it's as low as 4% and maybe some sports as high as 10% that move on from high school seniors to college freshmen, which leaves 90 to 95% of kids that just, while they love it and they might be pretty talented, there's not a spot for them. So that's what I think people have to realize. While it does work out for a lot of kids and student athletes, there's just not space for everybody. So that's what people are up against.
Well, and that gets us to our second myth, and that is, of course, that a lot of parents, particularly the fathers, will say, well, I know my kid's ability better than anyone. I taught him the game. I coached him through Little League and summer ball right into high school. And people tell me I'm not being objective about his talents, but they're way off base. And to your point, Wayne, yeah, the NCAA makes it very clear that less than 4% of all high school varsity athletes ever go on to play intercollegiate sports at any level. Less than 4%, which gets back to flipping around to, like you said, 95, 96%. The vast majority of kids are done after their last high school game. And there are, unfortunately, a lot of parents out there who say, yeah, but my kid is a star. And obviously he or she is going to be one of that 4% that goes on, even though the odds are stacked way against them. So, again, the objectivity that parents think they bring to their evaluation of their youngster, unfortunately, they're usually off base.
Yeah, and that's why those people that are in those individual sports like swimming and track and golf and a few others, it's just easier because you're really competing against yourself and you have your time or whatever your event is, and you can say, all right, well, I run the mile in 4:20. Well, I'm probably a Division I runner because that's what their runners do. Okay, well, then you're probably pretty accurate. But if your son's on the basketball team and just because he puts in 17 points a game, you think, well, he must be a Division I player because he puts in 17 a game. Well, that tells nobody the level of competition. So maybe in those games when you play the weaker team, he puts in 30-something, and then when you play that one team that really has the kids that are going to be college-bound basketball players, now all of a sudden he's only scored 7 points because now he's not as good compared to that level of competition. So stats in the team sports are very difficult to judge, and even just watching their talent level is difficult to judge because you simply see the games that they play in their conference in high school, and even if it's summer where there's more competition, you're not a coach that's recruiting the whole Northeast or the whole East Coast, or in certain sports they recruit the United States, and they have a different perspective of what they're looking for. So that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah, it's no question. As you mentioned, it's a lot easier with the very, very objective individual team or objective or sports like swimming, like tennis, where the kids are all ranked. Sports like that, where obviously, or track and field, the numbers speak for themselves.
Golf would be the same.
Of course, but the fact is, when you get to those team sports, just because you're all league or all section within your division, I'm sure the kid is talented, but the question is, that kid project to go and play at a much higher level. That's difficult. Now, you said last week also, Wayne, which sort of surprised me a bit, and that is that you felt that, and there are a number of these online recruiting services in which the parent pays, have the kid basically put together a video package and has all their credentials put online in the hopes that colleges will contact them. You felt, as I recall, that you thought those were kind of worthless, that most college coaches don't pay much attention to those.
Well, I don't think recruiting is that easy where you just log on and find everyone you're looking for. And there's a lot of these companies out there, and I guess it's difficult to throw every company that's trying to do this into the same mix. But, for example, there's a free service or a low-cost service, berecruited.com, which a lot of kids are familiar with. I think that kind of service is fine. I mean, it provides some resources, some information, and at least at the end of the day, it's either free or costs you very little, where there are very similar programs that offer the same but promise a lot more and charge a lot more money. And my problem with those is, number one, the expense, and number two, it leads kids and parents to think, okay, I've paid this, I've put my information on this site, now I really don't have to do anything and take it into my own hands. It'll take care of itself. And, I mean, if you survey college coaches, that's just not the way we find people.
Yeah, I think that's the important part. And again, you mentioned about, be recruited, which there is no fee involved to the youngsters, so there's no downside. But all these services where you pay money for, you say, well, now I've done my homework, I've made the attempt, I've posted my stuff, and then I'll just sit back and wait for the offers or the coaches to contact me. That's not necessarily getting the job done. That's sort of self-defeating.
Yeah, it's a silly analogy, but it'd almost be like, you know what, I'd like to be an actor. I'm going to put my headshot and my credentials on some acting website, and then I'm just going to sit back while Steven Spielberg calls me in for the next big role. It would be fantastic if life worked that simply, but it just doesn't. So,
Exactly right. I think that's a pretty good analogy. 1-877-337-6666. My guest is Wayne Mazzoni. Let's get with some calls right away. Let's go to Gary in the Bronx. Hi, Gary. You're on the Fan.
This is an award-winning show. This is a great topic. And I always caution people, remember, you can never remove the human element, the human emotion from anything you can do. Coaches are capable of lying. I'll let you know that the big schools have what's called area scouts. They know what's going on. That doesn't mean they're great scouts for talent, but that's what their job is. I just like to tell them also, they don't know this, but these colleges have been endowed with billions of dollars from donors. I'll give you an example. Earlier this year, the basketball team in Hofstra, some members of it, sacked the dormitory in the university. They were accused of robbery and stuff. Mm-hmm. And those people who made those endowments and those gifts to the colleges did not have those kids in mind. They had the kids in mind who went to class, did good, and were really student athletes. I think more money, and parents out there should demand that more of that endowment money be released for scholarships, for baseball, for hockey, for swimming. Those are sports that don't get it. I know you're going to tell me about TV contracts, but they're sitting on billions of dollars, and you guys know it.
Well, Gary, thank you for the call. Wayne, let me, before we answer that, because it's a fairly complicated question, we do have to take a commercial break, and John Minko has our update. But, yeah, the athletic programs more and more are, people have to understand, particularly at the Division I level, these are all about business and making money and generating revenue. And to Gary's point, there are real, concerns how this is implemented. But again, let me take a pause. Wayne, we'll come back, get your thoughts about this as well. And obviously, we'll take more calls, and we'll get through some more of the myths and misconceptions of college recruiting. Continuing our conversation this morning with Wayne Mazzoni, talking about the myths and misconceptions of the college recruiting game. And very, very quickly, Gary from the Bronx had just called before the break, Wayne, and talked about the business of scholarships, and I think that's something that really bears some emphasis. This is the business of college sports, and colleges have budgets and bottom lines just like any other business, and clearly they're looking for revenue streams. Usually it's within big-time college football or basketball, sometimes with ice hockey or lacrosse. But all the other sports are not revenue producers, and they're not going to put out scholarships unless they really feel it's going to have a major payoff for them.
I think what you're looking at with college athletics is really almost two completely different scenarios. There are just certain colleges in this country, it can't be more than maybe 200, that are just big-time athletic departments, major state schools, lots of ticket sales, lots of boosters, corporate sponsors, TV contracts, and that's its own whole world of recruiting and whole business side. And then there's really the rest, which is probably going to encompass 90% of college athletic departments, Division I, II, III, these other levels where it's really not massive revenue producers. They have to fundraise. Teams that take trips have to fundraise, and the budgets are small, and it's totally different. And generally, when I do my talks and when we have these interviews, we're really talking about that group of it. We're not talking about the kid that's from a Merrimack High School that's a 6'6" lineman that was 300 in 10th grade, that everyone's going to be all over this kid. That world of recruiting, of course, is significant and important, but it just doesn't encompass a lot of kids that listen to these shows and that come to my talks. And those other set, it's a totally different recruiting process. Budgets, it's so different. It's almost, I guess, like regular business. There are huge, massive companies that have tremendous profits and regular companies that don't. So they're so different that they're hard to almost talk about in the same context.
And yet, I do want, this gets into our next quick topic, which we touched upon briefly at the end of last week's show. All those other 90% of those other colleges, it's not really about generating revenue for the university. It's just about having a competitive team. And a lot of this is that, well, if we have a really good, Division III football team or basketball or ice hockey or baseball, that'll help theoretically with donations from the alums to keep the school afloat. But we talked about the fact that there are recruited athletes, whether you're recruited at a University of Michigan for football or you're being recruited for football at a D3 school, there are recruited athletes, but there also are things such as a preferred walk-on or a traditional walk-on. Wayne, just go through that very quickly again so we can basically clarify what those various terms mean.
Okay, so in the scholarship levels, you really have three ways you can get on a roster. One is a scholarship player. You sign a letter of intent for whatever amount of scholarship, but you're obviously guaranteed to be on that team, certainly for year one through that scholarship offer. Then once those scholarships are used up, it doesn't mean recruiting is over. Coaches need to get good players and fill out rosters and needs, but they don't have any money left. So that is a recruited walk-on. That person's guaranteed a roster spot for a year. Recruited, they're just not offered scholarship money. Maybe they earn it down the road, maybe they don't. And then there's the true walk-on that doesn't have any guaranteed spot on the team and has to take their chances and go to an open tryout, and it's very difficult for a variety of reasons to make those teams. In the Division III level, since there is no scholarships, everything is really a recruited walk-on or an old-fashioned just walk-on. But a lot of people seem to get confused that even though these Division III schools don't offer scholarships, people are under the impression they don't recruit. They recruit like crazy. They recruit hard. They recruit like everybody else. They just cannot offer a scholarship. You don't sign a letter of intent to commit to a team. Generally, your commitment is, an early decision, an early application type thing, and when you sign or send in your deposit, that's when you've committed to that school. Yeah,
and I just want to add a little postscript to that, because I'm glad you mentioned that the D3 schools, which do not offer scholarship money, somehow they aren't involved in the recruiting process. They are extremely involved because they do want to have excellent or competitive teams. And for a lot of those schools, which were the admissions rates are very, very competitive, the academic D3s in particular, they have something known as slotted athletes. And Wayne, I don't know if you've encountered that term or not, but I'm very much aware of the fact that there are certain schools will tell athletes and tell the parents, you are going to be a slotted recruit, meaning that we're pretty much going to guarantee you will be accepted into this college. And because we're given so many slotted athletes each year by the admissions office. And if you get that golden ticket to say you're slotted, that means you get a pretty good chance of getting in.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about those Division III schools, sometimes that's their chip to play in the recruiting game. Since they're not going to offer you a scholarship, and listen, I like you enough as a person and as a student athlete that I'm going to commit to you by giving you one of my slots, and I'm going to need you to do the following. You're going to have to come up for an interview. You're going to have to apply early. There's going to be a variety of things that go along with it, but that really is their way to fill out their roster with athletes that commit to that school. So
yeah, they feel that you're a blue chip prospect. That being a slotted kid means that the coach obviously is looking for you to produce when you arrive on campus your first year. As you say, it's a roughly parallel to being a scholarship athlete at a Division III program.
Right, correct.
Okay, let's get to some calls at 1-877-337-6666. Let's go to our friend Ed over in Elizabeth. Hi, Ed. You're on the Fan.
Good morning, Rick. Good morning, Wayne.
Hey, Ed.
How you doing? Wayne, you brought up a great point, and I think people need to understand this. You talked about scholarships or roster spots are only 1 year, and this is the thing that sometimes parents don't understand. That they take the scholarships for 4 years, but they don't realize that all scholarships and roster spots are all 1 year renewables.
Right.
And that's what people don't understand on that. But another point that I wanted to bring up, which I feel is important, when people are looking at schools, they got to look at, if they're going to go to showcases, they got to look at showcases that match their players' level. I get emails on showcases that are going on and all that stuff, and what colleges are going to be here. And it seems like a lot of showcases, about 95% of the schools that are at the showcases are all Division I's.
Right.
The point I want to bring on that is people got to go about this right way. Number one, the parents have to send emails out to the coaches so this way they're aware of who they are. Two, they got to have a high school coach who's willing to help them out, and I feel that that's very important. And number three, with it seems like everyone now is playing travel baseball because it seems like the way to go to get promoted for colleges. Make sure you're going to a travel baseball program where the coach knows what he's doing. Everyone's starting a travel team right now.
Yeah.
But do a lot of these coaches know how to promote a kid to colleges and all that. And it seems like everyone's starting a travel team, but when like I have a travel team myself. When I ask people that, they're looking at another team, I said, have they talked about how they go about selling your son for the college process, which I feel is very, very important in today's society.
No, Ed, these are excellent points as you obviously have on the show, and let me discuss that. Thanks for the call, Ed.
All right, Rick.
Take care. And Wayne, one thing that he mentioned, which I think is significant, which most parents don't understand, or the kids, is that the scholarships are for 1 year. They are renewable, and coaches obviously know this stuff better than the kids do. Many times, it's important for a youngster to understand, and again, they don't understand this, that okay, I made the team as a walk-on or as a preferred walk-on, and I'm excited and thrilled to be a freshman on the varsity at this Division III program or Division I program. But what they forget is that every year the college coach is always actively recruiting more kids. So unless you are considered to be a star and you're getting a lot of playing time as a freshman, you got to understand there's a whole new wave of new kids coming in next year who probably will be looking to take over your spot. That's the first thing. Number two, a lot of coaches will say to kids, well, you know what, I don't have any scholarship money to offer you this year, but if you contribute well as a freshman, then next year we'll talk about money when you're a sophomore. But again, there's no promise of that. It's sort of like, it sort of seems like, well, a little bit of a bait and switch. These are the things that parents sometimes aren't aware of, and it can really come back and bite their kids in the butt.
Well, there's a few things to discuss with this. First of all, college coaches would love it all to work out perfectly. You'd love the recruiting class you sign every year, that the kids are great in the classroom, they have great work ethic in the weight room, they show up to practice on time, they play great, they pan out, they produce, they stay 4 years, they graduate, they're alums, they come back for the games, they send money in, they invite you to their weddings. That would be the great way to go. And
yes.
What? It does happen a lot, and it's the beauty of coaching. Conversely, sometimes you get a kid and they struggle in the classroom, or now all of a sudden they can't control their social lives being on their own, and all of a sudden now that affects their on-field performance, and you have to evaluate, is this kid, what we thought they were going to be? Are they the type of person, are they the type of player that we thought they were? Now, obviously, when they're on scholarship, you hope it pans out, because coaches don't really want to play general manager. We don't want to sit in the office and say, you didn't run for as many yards as we thought, we're going to take your scholarship money away. And it's really not going to. That doesn't happen. But the point is that kids also hear what they want to hear. Like we've said it to players, listen, in some instances, kids that come in without money, if they turn out to be great players, we will give them money. So now a kid hears, they give money to kids after they're here. Well, yeah, that's for that's the 1 in 20 kid that was a recruited walk-on that all of a sudden is now starting and dominating. Yes, they deserve some money, but everyone hears, the coach says if I play well, I'll get money. Well, that's not every kid. Yeah. So one of the difficult parts of this is kids sort of hearing what they want to hear, and I guess we all are that way. We sort of get told something and we interpret what that means, but the reality is that very small percentage of those kids who come in without money actually get money during some part of their career.
Very, very perceptive stuff there, Wayne, and as you said, and I haven't been a college coach for a number of years, I know that parents come in with great expectations, the kids do as well, and obviously the parents are very eager to hear what they want to hear, and sometimes they don't really see all the possibilities or things that can go sideways with a kid playing sports in college. And those are realities, and the college coaches do, in fact, know that. We're talking with Wayne Mazzoni, the pitching coach at Sacred Heart University. And, Wayne, we're talking about recruiting at the college level. Let's get to our callers, as our time is limited. Let's go over to Bayport, and Lee is standing by. Lee, good morning. You're on the Fan.
Good morning.
Lee, I think we seem to have lost you here, but please call back. Let's go to Brian over in Wyckoff, New Jersey. Brian, good morning. You're on the Fan.
Good morning, guys. My experience was my son was a mid-level Division I recruit, top-level Division III recruit, and he was an average student at best. And it's the sports component adds a whole other dynamic to finding a college. You have to find the right size school in the right geography. with the right dynamics academically. And that's hard enough. And then when you add the sports component, it just adds another element that makes finding a school really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an easy process that you do on a Saturday morning for an hour or two and say, well, we're done. It still involves the whole basic process, Wayne, of going through, finding that college that best suits your son or daughter's personality, their needs academically. And as we all agree, you got to sit down with your son or daughter and say, look, suppose you don't make the team. Suppose you hurt your knee. Suppose you hurt your arm and you're finished with playing sports, which unfortunately does happen. Would you still be happy at that school?
Yeah, that guy brought up a great point. That really is the first step. And I actually think using sports makes the process easier in that there's a lot of colleges out there, and you're looking for anything that your son or daughter wants to narrow that list down. So if they said, well, Mom, I really like to be 3 hours from home because I like to be away, but I want to be able to come back for Thanksgiving and drive home. And okay, all right, we just took a lot of colleges and we narrowed it down to 3 hours from home. And then they say, well, as I've been on more and more campuses, I don't want to be in a city, but I don't really want to be in the middle of nowhere. I'm looking for sort of like a suburban campus. Okay, that narrows it down. Then if I really decided now I want to study chemical engineering, that narrows it down. Oh, and I want to play basketball, and I'm probably a Division III player, that narrows it down. So the more the kid learns about themselves in terms of academically what they're looking for, what they want out of their college experience, and then athletically, all of a sudden 5 to 10 to 15 schools emerge that are really the right fit for this kid. And while that's not easy to do, now all of a sudden all your efforts in terms of getting coaches to know about you and which camps and which tournaments and videos and all these different things, it becomes much easier when you say, these are my 10 schools. I'm now going to get those coaches at those schools to know who I am and evaluate me as a student athlete for their team. And it gets much easier rather than just being open-ended and having no schools specifically and just trying to get everyone interested in you. It's very difficult.
And just to underscore that, you mentioned about a kid saying, okay, I want to major in chemical engineering, and I do want to play basketball at a Division III program. Well, the school that popped into my head right away was chemical engineering is a pretty demanding major, and he wants to play basketball. Well, how about MIT? And then I'm thinking, MIT basketball, I mean, the average person might say, come on, how good can they be at MIT? All these engineering geeks, how good can they be in basketball? And then you say, well, MIT basketball at the Division III level is actually one of the premier programs in the country, and they're always a top record, and they're always one of the top teams. And these are all real students. So then these are not. Nobody gets into MIT on a, just with having the low SAT scores. This is a premier program, but that's what I'm talking about. Making the team at MIT in basketball, men's basketball, that's no easy feat.
They're probably so smart that they've actually figured out all the angles on all the different shots, so that's why they go in more than other teams, is my guess.
Perhaps. Let's go to Hackensack. Joey, hi there. You're on the Fan.
Hey, how are you? Good morning.
Yeah, Joey.
Yeah, I have a daughter who just, she's a freshman in high school. She plays a high-level softball club team. And the club team price is like $3,500 to $5,000 because of the showcases. Do you think it's better off going to a camp? There's college that she's interested in for the week, spend $500 instead of spending the $5,000 freshman year?
That's a good question. Thanks, Joey. Wayne, you answer that one because, this is real money in showcases versus going to college camps.
My goodness, I mean, that's been the real big question in the recent past. And, I think, and I don't know the softball world as well as the baseball, and I try not to make this really sports-specific, but I get asked that question all the time. Should a kid play in, like, Legion baseball, local to his town, it's cheaper, and then do some camps or different events, or play on a travel team, which is more expensive, go to bigger events and whatnot? I think every family has to evaluate their own situation, and it's almost tough to give a blanket answer. The reality is, you can get recruited if you're a good enough player by sort of taking any path, as long as there's some plan in place for what you're going to do to get those schools to know about you if you've done what we just talked about, having a list of schools. So I tell you, that's a tough question, and my kids are getting to the age where I'll have to make that choice too, and I think you just determine your own finances. And here's the other piece. It's what do you want your summer to be like? I mean, some of these teams, it's 75 games, and it's not 1 second to go to the beach or do anything else. And I get that from more parents of like, hey, this other team, I can take a week vacation and be together with the family. And this other team, they said if I miss 2 games, we're off the team.
Mm-hmm.
Every family's different. Everyone has to evaluate what's best for them financially and all other aspects. So I'd love to give a clear-cut answer, but I don't think it would be right to do that.
I will add this, though, that the travel team mentality is as you said, it's a herd mentality, and you feel like if my kid is going to be have a chance, that's you can't miss any games, whatever. I will say this: if a kid knows that there are a couple of colleges they really are seriously considering, and that particular school, that college, does offer a showcase or a camp where the kid can go and actually for a weekend, see, meet the coaches, see the facilities, see what kind of other kids there are competing to go to that college. That's probably much more valuable than going to a traditional showcase, where I understand you're going to see a lot of different college coaches there. But at least that way, when you go to the college, you can sort of get a sense whether you feel you belong there. As I said, what kind of the other competition is going to be, and whether you like the coaches or not. I think
absolutely. That's great advice, absolutely.
But again, it's expensive, and again, maybe some programs where the colleges don't have those kind of opportunities. Showcases, as we've discussed on the show many times, you never know what you're going to get with a showcase because, quite frankly, you don't know how many college coaches are actually going to show up. So, all right. We're talking this morning with Wayne Mazzoni and about the whole arcane business of college recruiting, and I urge you to check out his website, Get Recruited. That's one word, getrecruited.net. Wayne, just got a couple minutes here to wrap this up. What is your takeaway? And again, you mentioned just before the break that you're looking yourself at your own kids and the whole recruiting process. What kind of advice would you give to the parents who obviously are running into this head first and are just finding it unbelievably confusing?
Well, the first thing is that I see people really, really stressed out with this process because there's not really a complete grasp of information. They get it secondhand from other parents, other players, a little bit online here and there, and I think that's why I'm sort of in demand with my books and speeches as I sort of lay out from start to finish the process, and that's what I sort of attempt to do is de-stress the people on this, because sort of just give them a game plan of what they should be doing at each stage. So I guess the takeaway would be sort of research your sport, your particular child. Try to get a little bit of a game plan going of what you're going to do in terms of their academic development, their athletic development, their strength and conditioning, and visiting schools, and sort of have a plan together along with a guidance counselor and a coach and your support team, so that there is actionable steps to take rather than just sit there and go, God, I hope we're doing the right thing. And I think that's where the stress comes from. So to sort of make a game plan for each particular kid is really what I certainly will do with my kids. I mean, obviously I have an advantage of going through this, but for other people, I think it's the unknown which causes the stress. So the more they can learn about it and then make a plan, I think it makes it much easier to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very smart approach because, as you said, if you just sort of try to ignore it or hide from it, you end up being even more stressed out, and it's just not fair to your youngster who's looking to you for some sort of guidance, and it is very, very complicated. And again, it's not the kind of thing you just said earlier on the show, well, you just put it on an online recruiting service and I'll sit back for the offers to come in. It doesn't work that way. It's not that easy.
No, it doesn't. Unfortunately not.
Yeah. Wayne, again, my thanks. Again, this is